The details are still coming out about what happened in Benghazi on September 11th. In off-camera briefings, in congressional hearings, Special Report has investigated as well. Greg Palcott took that information and went to Benghazi himself. There he talked to eyewitnesses and scoured the abandoned compound for additional clues. Now he pulls it all together and walks you through a timeline of terror you won't soon forget.
September 11th, 2012, morning. The U.S. ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens, has a full day of meetings ahead of him. But since it's the 11th anniversary of the al-Qaeda attacks, he schedules all of them out of caution behind the perceived safety of the U.S. mission walls in Benghazi. 7:30 p.m. Stevens takes his last meeting in the large residence building with the Turkish consul general. It ends after an hour. 8:30 p.m. Stevens escorts the diplomat to the main gate. He makes small talk in Arabic to the guards and returns inside. At this point, outside the main gate of the compound, on the other side of the U.S. mission walls in this Benghazi neighborhood, all is quiet. No stirrings of any protest, no sign of the real hell about to unfold. In fact, the ambassador decides to turn in for the night. 9 p.m. Still no sign of any kind of spontaneous demonstration over that web video. A protest the Obama administration would later suggest escalated into a deadly riot. Joining Stevens in the main residence building is Information Management Officer Sean Smith and 4 diplomatic security special agents. Another agent is at the nearby Tactical Operations Center. All these agents are armed with pistols. 9:40 p.m. This amateur video apparently captures the first movement outside the compound. The mad mob of attackers break through here, the main gate, a weak point in the defense of the mission. And then they move on here to the understaffed Libya militia barracks. They storm the place. They torch it. They light up embassy cars around it, and then they move on. According to eyewitnesses, the fighters are well armed and organized, flying the radical Islamist flag, some with foreign accents. The agent in the operations center sees in monitors scores of men pouring into the compound.
A diplomatic security agent working in the Tactical Operations Center immediately activated the imminent danger notification system.
State Department official Charlene Lamb was working that night in Washington, and so she could follow the events in real time.
He also alerted the quick reaction security team stationed nearby, the Libyan 17th February Brigade, the embassy in Tripoli, and the Diplomatic Security Command Center in Washington.
Back here in the main residence, the special agent, reportedly David Ubben, comes here and gets Ambassador Stevens from his bedroom and brings him, along with Sean Smith, to this room in the safe haven. Really, aside from some medicine and other supplies, a big, dark, windowless closet. And then, outside, a locked gate. Hope for security. Ubben radios the others in the compound to say they are fine. The other security agents are scrambling amidst the gunfire and explosions, gathering up their machine guns, body armor, and ammunition from the other buildings. As 2 of them head back to the main residence, they're cut off by a large group of armed men. They decide to go back and barricade themselves in. At this point, there are 7 Americans at 3 different locations, Ambassador Stevens and 2 others in the main residence, 2 special agents at the second residence and cafeteria, and then here in the Tactical Operations Center, 2 more agents. Attackers all around. One group penetrates the small residence. The attackers, however, don't get to the agents, and they eventually leave. Inside the main residence, it is a different story. Attackers come in here and they ransack the place, and then they go for the locked gate. They look inside. It's dark. They can't see anything. And then they try the lock. They can't open it up. Inside, Agent Ubben has got a gun trained on them, ready to shoot if need be. But, as Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Wood says, the safe haven is only safe for a short time.
It's a delay for an aggressor, but it has to rely on someone to come in to rescue him as well.
That someone, Wood says, might have been his elite site security team, but they've been pulled out of the country. Either way, Stevens, Smith, and Ubben were trapped by diabolical killers who pour diesel fuel around the house, light it, and leave.
When we come back, the trapped Americans tried desperately to escape. Before the break, Greg Palcott told you how terrorists overran the U.S. consulate compound in Benghazi, Libya. A handful of Americans caught by surprise, pinned down in 3 different locations. 3 of those people, including Ambassador Chris Stevens, have locked themselves in a so-called safe haven constructed in one of those buildings. The attackers can't break in, so they've set the place ablaze. Once again, from Benghazi, here's Greg Palcott.
September 11th, around 10 p.m. The entire safe haven, which takes up part of the first floor of the main residence, is black with thick smoke and fumes. Ambassador Stevens, Sean Smith, and David Ubben move to a bathroom within the safe area, which has a window. They try to open it, but it doesn't help. There's just too much smoke. They drop to the floor, trying to get air, but even down there, they can't breathe. So they decide to leave the safe haven and take their chances with the armed attackers who have taken over the U.S. compound. Fighting the heat and smoke, they find another window grill they can open. This is the window that Special Agent Ubben jimmies open and crawls out of, but Stevens and Smith do not crawl out after him. And so, even though he can barely see, barely breathe, he goes back in. In fact, he goes back in and out several times. He can't find them, and he is overcome with smoke. Ubben struggles up a small ladder to the roof of the building and collapses. He radios the other agents. Another U.S. agent in full combat gear emerges from the Tactical Operations Center. Throwing a smoke grenade to hide his movements, he moves to the small residence and gets the 2 agents holed up there out. The 3 then get into an armored vehicle parked nearby and drive the short distance to the large residence. Taking turns, they crawl into the residence on their hands and knees, feeling their way through the building to try to find their 2 colleagues. They find Smith. They pull him out of the building. He's dead. Now remember, the crack site security team is gone, but there's a small unit of security at the annex a mile away. 6 Americans and 16 from the Libyan militia arrive. Some surround the compound. The others go in. They're unable to find Stevens. By 11, the Libyan forces say they can no longer hold the perimeter. The American agents carrying Smith's body pile into an armored vehicle and exit the main gate. They head for the annex about a mile away. The crowd fires upon them and throws 2 grenades under their vehicle. They take direct fire from AK-47s from about 2 feet away. Despite 2 flat tires and heavy damage to their vehicle, they keep rolling. Several blocks away, they hit more traffic in a busy Benghazi neighborhood. The car careens over the middle divider, pushes forward against opposing traffic, and finally makes it to the annex and again hoped for safety. Sometime after midnight, back at the mission, looters enter the building and find the body of Stevens slumped on the floor. Although they don't know who he is, they drag him out through a window. His eyes are dazed, his face smoke-stained, seemingly lifeless. When someone says he's breathing, the crowd is relieved and cheer. Allah Akbar, God is great. Around 1 a.m., Ambassador Stevens is brought by car here to the Benghazi Medical Center, where doctors try desperately to resuscitate him for some 45 minutes. They fail. He dies of severe asphyxiation. Back at the annex, the battle is on again. Fighters hitting the place with AK-47 fire and rocket-propelled grenades, forcing those inside to retreat to a building further back in the annex compound. Sometime after 1:30 at the Benghazi airport, a team of reinforcements arrives from the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli. They make their way to the annex. According to reports, they were going into an ambush. Around 4 a.m., this annex compound is hit by another wave of attacks. It is described as planned and precise. A round of mortar fire targeting the roof of a building set well behind this gate. That turns out to be dangerous and deadly. Killed in that attack, 2 security personnel, Glenn Doherty, 42, and Tyrone Woods, 41, both former Navy SEALs. Badly injured, Special Agent David Ubben, the same man who struggled valiantly to save the lives of Ambassador Stevens and Information Manager Smith. The fighters are repelled. The annex, reportedly a base of operations for sensitive intelligence work tracking militants in eastern Libya, is secured, and a decision is made to evacuate the whole enterprise. 8:30 a.m. September 12th. The second plane leaves with the remaining Americans on board and the bodies of Ambassador Stevens, Smith, and Agents Doherty and Woods. It's less than a month since the military site security team left the country, to the regret of its commander, Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Wood, who says they would have made a difference.
It was a job of the SST to protect the ambassador should something like that happen. It was our job to defend the compound and engage those targets until he could be extracted.
Chris Stevens was the first U.S. ambassador killed on duty in more than 3 decades. September 11th, 2012 was a tragedy that will long be remembered. Then the story moved back to Washington. Was what followed the fog of war an attempted cover-up or something else? Special Report investigates after the break.
Had I been president at the time, and I found that you did not read the cables from Benghazi, you did not read the cables from Ambassador Stevens, I would have relieved you of your post. I think it's inexcusable. The thing is that, we can understand that you're not reading every cable. I can understand that maybe you're not aware of the cable from the ambassador in Vienna that asked for $100,000 for an electrical charging station. I can understand that maybe you're not aware that your department spent $100,000 on 3 comedians who went to India on a promotional tour called Make Chi Not War. But I think you might be able to understand and might be aware of the $80 million spent on a consulate in Mashar al-Sharif that will never be built. I think it's inexcusable that you did not know about this and that you did not read these cables. I would think by anybody's estimation, Libya has to have been one of the hottest of hot spots around the world.
What I'm making is a very simple phone call to these individuals. I think would have ascertained immediately that there was no protest prior to this. I mean, this attack started at 9:40 p.m. Benghazi time, and it was an assault. And I appreciate the fact that you called it an assault. But, I'm going back to then Ambassador Rice, 5 days later, going to the Sunday shows, and what I would say purposefully misleading the American public.
I just want to say that, people have accused Ambassador Rice and the administration of, misleading Americans. I can say, trying to be in the middle of this and understanding what was going on, nothing could be further from the truth.
Madam Secretary, do you disagree with me that a simple phone call to those evacuees to determine what happened wouldn't have ascertained immediately that there was no protest? I mean, that was a piece of information that could have been easily obtained.
Well, but Senator,
within hours, if not days.
Senator,
Again, we were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is